Yo, people, lateness is greatness. Welcome back into the building. You already know what time it is. Listen, we've got the Beautiful Game podcast on the show today. Do you see what I'm saying? We're not playing anymore. I've been trying to get these guys. They're busy boys. They're busy bees. But we got it done in the end. And let them introduce themselves. We'll go around clockwise. Boys, let them know who you are and let them know about the pod. We'll speak about the pod first of all, because you guys are smashing it. Daniel Sturridge, Jason Punchin. I just watched the Jason Punchin episode there. Killed it. Do you know what I mean? He's in Cyprus. He's doing his thing. And these guys kind of go off the grid. So I like the way that you bring them back. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's good to talk about the players that are doing the bits and when it's happening now, you know, Premier League. But when they're cast aside kind of thing and people want to know what's going on, you guys bring them back. So talk to us about that and let the people know who you are.
Yeah, love. My name's Dej, and obviously I'm one of the hosts from the Beautiful Game podcast.
From the Beautiful Game podcast. Shout out, you know, for having us on. I know it's been a while. We've always wanted to do it, and we're happy to finally get this done, bro.
100%. No better time than the international break. Do you know what I mean? That's when everything quietens down. People are talking about they're missing the Premier League already. But look, England versus the Faroe Islands, it should keep you man entertained when it happens. But before we get into that, I feel like the best place to start, because I've seen a lot of Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year debates happening in the Chelsea community. I wanted to widen it out to the whole Premier League. Shout out as well to the Football Writers Awards. They just took me on as well. Hopefully I might get a little vote in it this year. I've already joined the team there. So shout out to you guys. I'm looking forward to working with you a lot. And it's interesting because there's a lot of candidates this season. So I'm going to give a couple of my names and then we'll discuss it. And obviously you guys see who your suggestions, who your shortlist are as well. What clubs are you guys supporting as well? Because obviously you come from a very non-biased point of view when you're interviewing. I want to know now. I want to know who everyone's repping.
If you want the Daniel Sturridge interview, you know who he support. Obviously, we're both Liverpool fans.
Yeah, we're both Liverpool fans.
Both Liverpool. And is the third guy at Liverpool as well?
Arsenal.
Okay, yeah. Okay, cool, mad. So obviously Chelsea fans, a big rival there. And Young Player of the Year, I've got Foden, I've got Saka, I've got Tielemans, and I've got Neto at Wolves as my top 5. And then Player of the Year, I've got Diaz, Grealish, Mendy, Gundogan, Harry Kane, and just so Man United fans don't
Wait, pardon?
What? Harry
Mendy.
Kane, you don't want to hear it?
Wait, did you say Mendy?
No, yeah, Mendy at Chelsea, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Hey, I know it's a Chelsea predominant.
No.
I think you're clutching at straws, man. You're trying to save face, man.
No way.
All right, so why would you guys not have Mendy? Because I've got Mendy in there for the.
I wouldn't have him anywhere close to even
Really?
a consideration. Like, I don't even see him as a PFA goalkeeper of the year or like. Yeah, because I don't understand how Mendy can be in consideration. I'm yet to be fully convinced on him as a player, as a goalkeeper. Obviously, I respect him, what he's doing as an African goalkeeper, trying to remove the stigma of black goalkeepers, and I respect that. But in terms of being a PFA candidate, absolutely no chance.
I think another thing, though, we need to remember is Chelsea's defensive record last season. I think 54 goals conceded in the league. Obviously, he stopped the bleeding. But obviously, we have to remember his predecessor, Kepa. You know, he wasn't certainly pulling up any trees. And I think it was sort of like not an easy job going in after Kepa, but it wasn't the toughest job in goalkeeping. And when we're talking about PFA Player of the Year, there's several other candidates I'll put ahead of him. Mason Mount definitely deserves a shout. He's done a steady job. But as I said, he shouldn't be anywhere near, the PFA.
Because when
you tried to slip it in on his hold on.
I just moved on. I just put Mendy in there and I just kept reading and everyone was like, hold on, stop it. Let's just rewind the tape. Let me see what you're saying about Mendy. Because for me, the reason why I put Mendy in there, maybe there's a bit of bias in there, but when it comes to clean sheets to games ratio, he's got the best in the Premier League. I know he's not top for clean sheets, but he's up there. He's definitely top 3. And he's played the least games out of his competitors. So he's on course to win the Golden Glove. I think for your first season in the Premier League, the amount he cost, no one really knew who he was. I think he could get in the team of the year because who could you? Nah,
no.
Having Edison will be ahead of him definitely.
Yeah, I can
even.
Maybe 3 or 4 keepers. Obviously, it's not.
Come on.
No, honestly, like, he's been decent. He's been a decent signing. People are still yet to be convinced on him to see if he's going to be, you know, that top class goalkeeper. But for him to be considered as a PFA candidate, I think that's outlandish. If
I think Emi Martinez you could probably say he's had a better season.
I've got him on my outsiders list actually. Yeah, I've got Martinez, Rafinha, Ward-Prowse, and Luke Shaw. I feel like Chelsea have the second most amount of clean sheets in the league, 15, just behind Man City. You never know, we could do a thing.
All right, so let's get to the bottom of this list before we even start the debate. So who are the candidates on your list? And I think we'll all agree on your list. So
So for the Player of the Year one, so I've got Diaz, I've got Grealish, obviously Mendy, which is there's a massive disagreement there. Gundogan, Harry Kane, and Bruno Fernandes is what I've got on there.
Yeah, that's a strong. I would say that's fair. That's calm.
I think Mendy needs to go. If I'm being totally honest, I think there's people like Son. Obviously, I know he's dipped a bit, but started off the season fantastically. Mohamed Salah in a poor Liverpool season is still the top goal scorer in the Premier League. I think these people have a shout over him. James Ward-Prowse has been excellent at Southampton this season. Patrick Bamford at Leeds.
Yes.
People said that he's not good enough to cut in the Premier League. He's been excellent. Why isn't he under consideration? Kieran Tierney, I think, has been Arsenal's best player. He has a better shout than Mendy.
Nah, he doesn't. Come on. I know Kieran Tierney's been good, but they're where they are in the league for a reason. Do you know what I mean? They don't have a defensive record to match Chelsea like that. Remember, first and foremost, as a defender, your job is to keep clean sheets. And Arsenal are nowhere near Chelsea in that regard. Chelsea are second behind Man City. Second. You know,
yeah, but I think that's testament to the unit. Obviously, a goalkeeper is testament to the whole back four, back five as Chelsea play. And obviously, since Tuchel's come in, it's gone up another level. So that's obviously added to the stats.
Okay, all right. Well, before we we'll go back to the young player of the years because I feel like this is a very juicy debate as to who should win this. Obviously, like I said, Foden, Saka, Mason Mount, Tielemans, and Neto. Is there anyone else that you guys would add into that list before we start making decisions on who should actually win it?
Harvey Barnes, is he still eligible for that?
I've got 23 and then under. So I guess he's 22, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Harvey Barnes has to. Yeah, he's been exceptional with the numbers.
Wesley Fofana, absolutely incredible this season. Even Ruben Diaz qualifies, but I think because we put him in the PFA, we'll leave him out in the young PFA.
Yeah, I think is Diaz 23 or 24?
22, I think.
20? No way.
He's a monster of a defender.
Hold on a second. Is that what it is? I assumed he was a bit older because he doesn't act like it. He's 23, 24 on the 14th of May. So to be fair, 23 and under does qualify. So I'll stick him in for both. But we'll start with Saka and Foden because those are the two guys that English fans are pushing. You know, they're the two. What have you made of them this season? Because I think if we was to start with Foden, he's kind of taken the mantle at Man City. There's been a few injuries. Kevin De Bruyne's been out for a bit. Obviously, Gundogan stepped up and been kind of this false nine at times as well. But what have you guys made of Phil Foden? Because everyone kind of criticized Pep and they said, yo, Pep, you're not really playing him. You're stifling him, loaning him out. You're not nurturing him. You know, David Silva's obviously kind of given him the keys to the castle and he's kind of accepted them. Do you know what I mean?
Literally, no, to be honest, Phil Foden, as you mentioned, like last season, I remember Pep coming out and saying, you know what, Phil Foden, he's worth 350 million euros. And everyone's like, okay, you're saying this, but you're not playing him. But this season, he's taken his game to another level in terms of goals, assists. And for me, the crowning moment was when he came to Anfield and what he was doing. Like, you know, he took the game by the scruff of the neck, scoring goals. There's an arrogance in his game that he believes that, you know what, I'm a top player. I deserve to be starting in, week out. So he's definitely one of the front runners, although I think someone else should actually win it ahead of him.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah.
And your thoughts, bro? I mean, just to add to that, how much do you think England can rely on Phil Foden going into the summer's tournament? Because we know we got England game coming up. We know Foden's one of them players that, you know, we don't really get many of those type of players in England. Usually it's a little bit less, you know, that he gives that kind of Spanish vibe when they had their Xavis, their Iniestas. So just how much do you think we can rely on him as a young player? Or do you kind of see him as, yeah, he's in the young player category, but because of the way he stepped up for Man City, he's actually turned into a senior potentially?
It's a tough question to answer because you said traditionally we don't get that type of player, but I think this generation of England players are that type of player. You've got, you know, Maddison, you've got Jack Grealish. You've got, the youngsters coming through like Todd Cantwell, who's a different type but similar type of player. You've got Mason Mount that has the energy to just run up and down and also has the quality. In terms of Foden, I think this is the problem we have in England, is that we shouldn't be putting all the pressure on him to go and deliver in the Euro Championships. Yes, he's a world-class talent. Yes, he's got all the ability, but I think at his age, it would be unfair to expect him to carry England to like a final. I think he needs to be used as a squad player and an impact player, as well as like starting the games against the smaller nations. In terms of him winning the Player of the Year or the Young Player of the Year, I would say not for me. I don't think he's been the best youngster in the Premier League this season.
Wow. Okay, so Foden's already got
I think he's got the highest ceiling out of the young players. I don't think he's been the best because I don't think he's played enough, although his numbers are ridiculous this season.
And he's one of them ones that have obviously come straight through the Man City system as well, which is obviously, they've spent quite a lot of money on it. I would know as a Chelsea fan, we've done the same. Do you know what I mean? We've definitely flashed the cash around when it comes to investing in the youth. But the young players are starting to come through now in English football. That was a major criticism. Premier League clubs not giving, young English players a chance. And it's now your Fodens, your Sakas that are really coming through and not only playing bit parts and coming off the bench, but they're actually key players. Like when Foden's not in that starting 11, for the best team in the country, no doubt as well, maybe even potentially on form, the best team in Europe with Bayern Munich, people are like raising their eyebrows as to where Foden is. And that's mad to me because a couple of years ago, people were like, yo, there's no English talent anywhere. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's quite impressive. It's interesting to say that you both don't think he'll win it. I actually agree with you because I think the next man on the list is who I'd give it to, which is Saka. I think Saka deserves it because the difference that I established with the two players is that Foden is in the surroundings and the habitat to thrive. He's in the environment to do well with Pep, with Man City, quality players around him, top of the league. You're playing around world-class, confident players. Saka.
I agree, but sorry to interject. You can be in that environment and get found out. So it's not to step up to that sort of environment. It's pretty difficult. So it's easy to say, oh, Foden's playing well because he's surrounded by world-class managers and he's playing for arguably the best manager in the world. But that environment can find people out. It's really, really difficult to make that step up as a young player, especially when you're surrounded by world-class players around you. And if you don't have a good 60 minutes, you're not playing for the next 3 games. So for him to make that jump up and be one of the best players in that environment, I think you have to give credit to Phil Foden.
So when it comes to Saka, would you guys give it to him or are you leaning on someone else? Because a lot of the chat are saying they're 10th, and yes, they are. But for me, Saka's not the reason they're 10th. Saka might be the reason why they're not lower. Like he has been at times carrying that team. If you take him out,
he's their best player for me.
Far.
Saka, he's Arsenal's best player by a country mile. I mean, the contribution that he gives to the team coming in off the right. Some people even might argue that that's not his best position. We've seen him left back, central midfield, and like the maturity in his game. And people might say, I know. Obviously, Dot said Foden's got the highest ceiling. Obviously, in terms of ability, people look at Saka, maybe think, oh, he's not the most technically gifted or pleasing on the eye. But in terms of what he gives you with efficiency and his tender years of age, in terms of decision-making, passing when you're meant to pass, shooting when you're meant to shoot, I think that, he's a top player, man.
I've been very impressed with him. Like you said, the positional versatility, ever since he broke onto the scene last season, he's played left wing back, he's played midfield, he's played cam, he's played left wing, right wing, and I've just been like left back, even as in a back four, and he hasn't looked out of place once for me. It's just very consistent, very feet on the ground as well. And every time he's not in that team, he looks that Arsenal team looks like they're missing something. They need him in that team, and I think for me the reason why I put him ahead, obviously the Foden point was brilliant. The fact that world-class players can actually make you look out of place very quickly if you're not performing, which is why I give Mbappe so much credit in that French team. A lot of people say, oh, well, he's surrounded by great players. Cool, but he was still the star of the show a lot of the time. And when you're playing with Pogba, Griezmann, you can look out of place very quickly in that French team. But because Saka, managerial wise, I wouldn't say that Arteta's on Pep's level as well from a coaching perspective. And then you put on top of that the fact that he's in a very, up and down Arsenal team with not really too many leaders as well to guide him. He's almost become the guy that has to lead from the front, because you look at Aubameyang, he's the captain, and brother missed the North London derby because he was on another team. So I'm just like, I kind of edge it towards Saka. I mean, what about you guys? Who would you give it to him, or have you got someone else in mind?
I think I always like a wild card, and probably me and Dot are going to be on the same page. And I think I was telling you off air. Go on.
No, go on, Dej. Go on, because I want to see because I know who you're thinking of, Dej.
Oh yeah,
but now I've changed my mind. You see what I'm trying to say? But I know who you're going to say, and you know how much I love this player.
I'm going to say Pedro Neto. I mean, what he's brought to the Premier League, man. The way he just takes on defenders, like he sort of hunches his back and he's like, you know what? I'm attacking you. Like, you know, the goal against Southampton where he just twisted man up, finished it. Like, and with him, you don't know what his ceiling can be. Now, I was even reading today that he's been linked. Obviously, Man United are seeing him as a suitable replacement instead of Jadon Sancho. And you can see that. But I think this guy can go all the way to the top, play for the Barcelonas, the Real Madrid.
You think so?
Like, he's on another level, man. 5 goals in the Premier League so far this season, playing in a very, very struggling Wolves. Wolves without Raul Jimenez, and he's carrying that. You know, people are sort of saying, Adama Traore, he's going to be the man this season. But no, Pedro Neto's gazumped him, and he's a top player, and I see him being next of that Wolverhampton conveyor belt of talent.
Yeah, and maybe the reason why they got rid of Jota so quickly is because they knew they had Neto in the pipeline. Is that the same player you were going to go with, bro? Is it Neto who's on your mind as well?
It was, but then I changed in the last second. That's my Archdale, one of my favorite players. He just doesn't make sense. Like, when I watch him, I'm like, how have you done that? Like, you're defying gravity. Like, you're just beating man like they're not there. And he's just a crazy player in terms of like talent and ability. But as much as I love him, I've always said who's been the most improved player in the Premier League this season. And this player was actually on your list for contenders for the Young PFA Player of the Year.
Okay.
And when I watched this player last year, I was like, I don't think he's good enough to play at the top level. But now I've watched him week in, week out. I think he's been absolutely fantastic for Leicester. And I'm going to go with Youri Tielemans as my Young Player of the Year.
That's fair. Do you know what? Yeah, that Leicester midfield.
So would you say he's been better than Harvey Barnes?
I would say that Youri Tielemans has been Leicester's best player this season. His work goes under the radar, but the way he's improved his stamina, he's off the ball, his passing ability. James Maddison has had some nasty injuries this season, and he's had to fill that void of James Maddison. And I think the way he's just handled all that pressure on his back to be Leicester's driving force in midfield has been terrific. And let's not forget they've missed Wilfred and Ndidi for large chunks of the season. And Tielemans has been the mainstay in that midfield.
And they're still up there in the table fighting for Champions League as well. You're making me want to change my answer, you know.
So who are you going for?
I had Saka, but now that you say Tielemans and you speak, and to be fair with Tielemans as well, he is the perfect box-to-box midfielder. Like you said, it's the stamina that he's bringing end-to-end, can get goals as well, scored at the weekend. You're making me want to change my answer to Tielemans. He is actually a bad boy. I remember when he was at Monaco, even at in Belgium, I think he was at Anderlecht. Very young, burst onto the scene like 16 years old. Everybody knew from the get-go he was a bad boy. Monaco move was a bit of an interesting one to me. It's when they had a lot of money and they were bringing in players. I didn't know if it quite suited him. And I thought Leicester were very intelligent to go and get him. I remember it's kind of similar to that Renato Sanchez situation where he was linked with English teams as well. Didn't quite work out for him. I think he seems to be back on the right path now, but he was being linked with like Man United, ended up going Bayern Munich. Those type of midfielders, if you guys in the chat remember Renato Sanchez of Portugal, you guys will know. Like he was looking like
when I came to Swansea, he had a little Swansea as well. Yeah,
he was looking like a bad boy. But Tielemans is a proper bad boy. He is. I'm not gonna lie. And when you bring in the injuries into it as well, that only just propels him even further because he's had to carry the can a lot. Like you said, there's been injuries. Maddison's injured currently. Obviously, Ndidi's been missing for large parts as well. And Leicester haven't, everybody keeps talking about the Leicester effect of them potentially falling off the cliff when it comes to Champions League. They're still there. And I personally think, I don't know if it's unpopular, but potentially the most balanced midfield and maybe the best midfield in the league. If all three of them are fit, only really Man City am I saying that could potentially be above them. Because I think everybody else, I would take their midfield hands down every time.
Yeah, the thing is about Tielemans, it's not the glamorous name. People will say Saka, Foden, but I think he won't win the award because obviously it usually tends to go to young English players or British players. So I don't think Tielemans will actually win the award. But for me, if you had to say who's the standout young player this season, it just has to be him for me because I think he's been fantastic.
I mean, the next player. So we've kind of all given our the guys that we would want, but obviously just to go through some of the other names. I mean, Mason Mount is on that list. Obviously, a lot of Chelsea fans will be on this channel and watching this on the playback as well. What have you guys made of Mason Mount? Because I think a lot of Chelsea fans now seem to be having their discussions of player of the year. I still think it's Mason Mount currently. I think when you're taking the whole season and you're not going off recency bias, which is what I see a lot of Chelsea fans doing, they're bringing in players that have been playing very well under Thomas Tuchel, but not for the whole season. Remember, Thomas Tuchel came in towards the end of January. We're talking about the whole season here. We're not talking about since Thomas Tuchel came in. We're talking about the whole season. And Mason Mount has been playing well under both managers. He's got the captaincy armband there at the weekend. He wasn't very good at the weekend though. I'm not saying he should be young player of the year. I wouldn't say he should be on that, but he's in the list for a reason. I think he's been really good. I mean, what have you guys made of him? I guess you guys are support of a club, so you'll be able to give us a non-biased view.
No, I think he's been fantastic, to be honest. And I remember earlier on this season, I spoke to Bradley Johnson. He used to play with Mason Mount at Derby County. And I sort of asked him, like, what's your take on him? Is he overrated? Is he underrated? And he's like, this boy, he's going to go right to the top. Like, he's someone that wants to learn, wants to improve his game. In training, he was mixing with the group. He wasn't sort of saying, oh, you know what, I'm at Chelsea. You guys are small boys for me. He was sort of saying that, listen, I want to learn. I'm staying after training, improving his game. He's almost like a mini Lampard. He wants to maximize his ability. And, you know, some of the stuff he's done this game, I still think he can get more goals. That's the only sort of slight I've got with him, that he can definitely get more goals. But I think generally so far this season, 5 goals in the Premier League, you know, he's doing his thing.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think, bro? For me, Mason Mount gets a lot of disrespect from Chelsea fans. I mean, maybe if we didn't have so many youngsters coming through at the same time, he might get more respect for what he's doing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't disrespect him. He's your best young player by a mile. A lot of Chelsea fans are quick to say, you know, Callum Hudson-Odoi or Reece James. But for me, Mason Mount is Chelsea's main man. And I recall earlier on in the season, after around 6 or 7 games into the Premier League season, I said, Mason Mount looks way better than Kai Havertz, and I got a lot of backlash saying, listen, you don't understand football, like you don't understand the game. And I'm like, listen, Mason Mount is a manager's dream. He performs every week, he gives his all, he's got the quality, and he's only going to get better. But in terms of young PFA Player of the Year, not for me. I don't think he should even be a contender this season.
That's fair. No, I would agree with you. I don't think I think for Chelsea, potentially young player of the year, I think he'll get that. I think he'll sweep that quite cleanly. But not with the names that we've got on the list. Outsiders, obviously, we mentioned Harry Barnes. Someone's putting Calvert-Lewin here. I think Calvert-Lewin's gone a bit quiet since the end of the year.
Started off well under Ancelotti. I remember it was banging in goals weekly, but in the last few weeks, that form has sort of nosedived, you know. And again, over the weekend against Manchester City was a bit anomalous. You know? So I think, that's a bit of a stretch to say he should be in the conversation.
Yeah. Are we surprised to see him in the England team, or do you think that's more of a long-term thing? Because obviously Patrick Bamford's firing. Ollie Watkins, I can understand why he's in it as well. So do you think it's a bit? Do you get why he's in the English squad? Because he's
a different option. Like when you look at the prototype of the strikers that England have gone for, he's sort of like the throwback. People compare him to Duncan Ferguson in terms of being able to whip the ball in, headers, hold up play. So I definitely think as an option, he's definitely a viable candidate. But a starter on week to week for England, I don't see it.
I agree.
Go for it, bro.
No, I was just saying I agree with Dej, but I think one name, just as an honourable mention, is Ezri Konsa at Aston Villa. I think he's been fantastic at centre-back this season. And obviously, that's a player that Southgate is really looking at and considering him for England duty. So I think Ezri Konsa is a good shout as well, just as I mentioned.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to these centre-backs coming through now, because I think that's the one area of the England team that I'm not too happy with at the moment. You know, Harry Maguire's and whatnot. I'm not feeling it. John Stones has been doing well. Give him his plaudits. I think also Tomori out on loan at AC Milan's doing quite well. Nigeria will tell me, yo, he's ours, but it is what it is. Do you know what I mean? I don't know who he's gonna. I think he's potentially already picked England. I don't know.
I think he played some minutes. There was a game where he came on. So doesn't that count? So isn't he disqualified? I believe.
Yeah,
so
he has. He did make a cap actually in Lampard's first season in October. Not sure who he was against, but he did make a cap. So once you make your cap, it's done out here. Joe Goldberg obviously had a lot of injury issues. But I want to, just before we go on to the player of the year candidates, because obviously you guys are Liverpool fans, I wanted to touch on Mason Mount's counterpart at Derby, which was Harry Wilson. Where is this brother gone? Because he was whacking in free kicks. I thought Liverpool, they're potentially going to get him involved, maybe the replacement for Shaqiri. We haven't seen him. Where's Harry Wilson gone?
He's at Cardiff on loan. I think he's doing a decent job, but just to say, I think he was very, very unlucky in that transfer window. Obviously, he had his loan spot at Bournemouth. He started off very, very well. He's putting in performances, scoring goals. I remember there was a stage where he scored like 5-6 goals. Then towards the back end, Bournemouth's form just fell off a cliff. And obviously that coincided with him. But I think the hope from Liverpool was to get him another loan move to a Premier League club. But obviously, as the window was coming to a close, nothing seemed tangible. And he was one of those players that got caught in that limbo. Okay, you can't move to a Premier League team, but the championship window is open for another week. So you might as well just go and get some football. And now he's at Cardiff. So it's a bit of a weird one because, as you mentioned, on his loan spell at Derby County, he was banging in goals. Him and Mason Mount were sort of carrying that team in terms of their performances, assists and goals. So, yeah, but obviously I don't see him having any long-term future at Liverpool, if I'm being honest. But yeah, it's a strange one.
It's a weird one because I thought, from what I saw at Derby, I was like, yo, I think this guy could be a serious threat. Do you know what I mean? Not to your original front three, which are obviously Firmino, Salah and Mane. And I think, obviously, the difference with Mason Mount and Harry Wilson is the fact that we were not at the pinnacle of English football, So we had the space in our squad to integrate young players and say, listen, we're not winning consistently anyway. Why not try and get, a young player in there and give them a chance? Whereas you guys were at the top of football, winning Champions Leagues and whatnot. There was not really a space for someone like Harry Wilson to flourish and come into the team.
And I think that spell at Bournemouth was sort of like, okay, you go and dominate at Bournemouth, then you might have a future in this Liverpool team. And obviously, as I mentioned, it started off well. So people think, hold on, he might not be good enough for Liverpool, but he's certainly good enough for a Prem team. But I just think the way it ended at Bournemouth sort of like soured his chances of getting into the Liverpool fold. And that's obviously how it culminated.
That's fair. That's understandable. I mean, someone's mentioning Gareth Bale because of the whole quote thing that's dropped today. I'm sure you guys have seen it.
Yeah, what did Bale actually say? I've seen the fallout. But...
He kind of just said that, listen, I'm just here to get my fitness up to make the Euros for Wales, and then I'm going to go back to Madrid at the end of the season. He's on loan, so maybe Tottenham fans got a little bit too emotional and got gassed and thought, he's going to stay and he's going to come back to us. And at the end of this, no one really expected him to say, I'm going back to Madrid when he's been treated so harshly at Madrid. So I think a lot of people are just clowning Tottenham fans right now because, your king came home and now he doesn't even want to stay, kind of thing. But I mean, he is on loan for a reason. So, I'm not really surprised by the comments. Maybe it's been taken out of context a little bit as well.
No, I think he could have said the normal PR comment that, listen, I'm just concentrating at my football at Tottenham. At the end of the season, we'll talk. We'll see where it leads me. But to say there's no sort of long-term option, I think obviously the regard that he's held in at Tottenham and sort of the early performances mixed together was a dangerous concoction. And obviously Tottenham fans are thinking, hold on, like you're not performing for us and you're saying you're using us for fitness. What type of joke is that kind of thing? So it's a fuss.
You got to remember, we're a platform that have interviewed so many players, and I think Bale, he's a seasoned pro. He knows how to deal with those situations. He knows how to give answers, to put things out, and he's done that intentionally.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And I think that just goes to show the feeling, in the camp at Tottenham, because certainly all is not well. Even I spoke to like a player, close friend, playing the Tottenham, close friend, and sort of like the stuff that's going on behind the scenes it's not great in terms of Mourinho, certain players, sort of that, what do we call it? That sort of old school coaching that he's been called out for in terms of the draconian sort of man-to-man management. I think some of that's starting to rear its head, and I think Tottenham camp is not a happy one. We have to be honest.
Mourinho is always due a bust up, but the problem is it usually comes after a trophy win. You know, if you don't get the trophy, what was it all for? Is what people will say. I mean, to finalise on the young player of the year as well, an honourable mention, I guess, to Declan Rice as well. He's captain West Ham, been very solid this season for them, linked with obviously moves to Chelsea as well. I mean, what have you made of him? Because obviously Souček is next to him in there, potentially stealing a lot more of the headlines. But I think for a player of that age to come in and captain West Ham, and where they are, you know, they've been in and around Champions League places as well all season. They was probably the second team in form table for quite a while as well, just below Man City when they were on their unbeaten run. And obviously Mark Noble's been able to take a step back there. So what have you guys made of Declan Rice? Because a lot of people say he's a bit overrated because of the English tax fee that they're going to stick on his head. Or what do you guys think?
No, I really like Declan Rice. I think he's a fantastic midfielder. He's improving with every game. The reservation that I had with him was, can he play in between the lines? If he's pressed, can he manipulate the ball? And from everything that I've seen this season, he seems like the future of England in that position. I mean, the way he, covers ground, the way he wins the ball, the way he intercepts passes, the way he passes the ball. I just think he's a fantastic player. And I've actually got a decent relationship with his dad, and they're level-headed. They're keeping him grounded, and he's a player that's going to go to the top of the game.
Yeah. I'm fortunate enough to see what he is personality-wise for a friend, and I think you can tell he is very motivated and driven to do well, and he wants to make the top. So West Ham are going to have a struggle keeping him. I don't think he signed a new contract here. I don't expect him to. I think he's going to be, Man United, Man City potentially. They're all going to be looking around for a DM, and I think he's going to be a lot. He could potentially be on the top of the list because he's bringing that leadership. He can play with the ball. He's quite good on the ball. He's got a left foot in him as well, which I don't think people give him enough credit for. He can switch play with his left foot. I agree with you, passing through the lines. That was my little thing there. Can he be press resistant and under the best presses in Europe when you're coming up in the Champions League? Can you handle that? Because in that position, that is in modern day football. That is what you got to do, especially at a team like Manchester City if they were to go after him.
I think the long term, I think he will end up at Manchester United. Personally, I think that's going to be his destination. I think that Chelsea interest is called now that Frank Lampard has been sacked. So I think the natural progression for him will be Manchester United.
Do you know what? England have been lacking in this role, I think, for quite a while. And, since Owen Hargreaves was always a great player, but he could never stay fit. Gareth Barry, Michael Carrick, there's always been players that they've tried to put in that position, but they've never really been true natural holding midfielders for me at the top level. And that's the one issue that the golden generation had. They had Lampard, they had Gerrard, they had Scholes. They didn't have anybody to anchor them, and also they didn't want to play 4-3-3. They was addicted to 4-4-2 for some reason. But now with Calvin Phillips coming up to, in the Premier League, having a great season at Leeds, you've got Declan Rice as well. There's some DMs there that you can use, and you can have a bit of balance in the team. But now we'll go on to, I guess, the player of the year. We already spoke about Mendy, so I won't make his case any stronger. I wanna start really with Bruno Fernandes, because listen, this guy is very controversial, right? And I have to put him on the list because Man United obviously up there in the league, and he's been their best player, maybe with Luke Shaw as well, who I've got in for the honourable mentions. But I just want to get you guys, obviously a Liverpool fan, so I'm hoping for a bit of bias, maybe, cheeky bias. But I mean, what do you guys make of Bruno Fernandes? Because he's one of them guys that he can be having I've watched him have clangers, really poor games, but he always gets involved and ends up getting the winning goal or the assist or winning the penalty or do you know what I mean? So it's very hard to rate him in a respect. You kind of have to wait for the 90 minutes to be done.
He's a bit of an enigma, isn't it? Like, when you think about it, as you mentioned, like, he can have a stinker for 80, 90 minutes, get that assist, get that penalty, all is forgotten about. And it's funny you mentioned that because we actually spoke to Yannick Balassi on our podcast, and he was saying that, listen, Bruno, he wants his stats. He doesn't care. He wants to get goal and assist. And that's sort of indicative of the modern day generation. So on one hand, you have to sit back and say, you know what, this guy delivers. Look, he's scoring the goals. He's getting the assists. He's their main man. But in terms of when you look at the whole package as a player, then you start to add the question mark. So that's why he's an enigma. Stats, assists, tick. Goals, tick. Contributions, tick. But whole package, you have your question mark. But to be fair, you got to give him his flowers. Bruno's had an amazing season in terms of contribution. But I think I remember seeing in the press, they sort of asked him, or he sort of came out and said, "Oh, people say I only score penalties, blah blah," and he sort of defended himself. But
does he need to get involved in that kind of stuff? Then
no. But again, that's the modern day player. Like, I'm getting my stats, I'm getting the assists. I'm gonna let you know, but I'm gonna retweet it. Yeah. He's even been on Twitter retweeting, okay, this is my goal, this is my assist. So I think that's just a modern, those players under 25. That's the way they see football now. Listen, okay, I've got my assist, I've got my goal, I've done my job.
It's weird because he's actually 28, so he's moving like the young ones. You know what I'm saying? It's mad. I mean, bro, what's your take on him? Because
whatever you think of Bruno Fernandes, it gets to a point where his numbers cannot be ignored. So whether you think he's got the best ball retention in the world, okay, maybe he doesn't, or does he have the ability to retain possession or play for a possession-based team? Maybe not. But when you take those numbers in isolation, you're going to have to give the player his accolades. I'm not Bruno Fernandes' biggest fan, but there's so many things that he has that other players don't. And I think that's what sets him apart. And I think the biggest compliment that I can give Bruno is his mentality.
Yeah.
And this is a skill that you don't see on the football pitch. This is something that goes on in his brain. He does not stop until he delivers a match-winning performance. And you have to give him credit for that. He delivers. He delivers. Wherever you put him, he's going to deliver. And that's why Ollie has to keep him on the football pitch for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was even listening to a podcast Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was on, and he was sort of talking about Bruno's mentality. Saying when he came into training, shook everyone's hand, how you doing today? Wanted to know everything about the club. And he's someone that wants to win. Maybe before the Manchester United camp was a bit fallible, no leaders, people sort of questioning Maguire, Pogba, whoever, but he fits in and said, you know what? We need to win. It's not enough being second best. It's not enough being the bridesmaid, finishing semi-finals, not producing on the big stage. So he, on top of the stats, he's got that winner's mentality. That's why you have to respect him.
And I think no matter what you think of Bruno Fernandes, as I said, he will never be my PFA pick player of the year. But the guy's mentality is world class, and you have to give him credit for that. And the one thing you talk about in terms of Manchester United, if he is injured, Man United are a completely different outfit. They won't finish in the top 4. So he's taken them from top 4 contenders to now second place. And I think you have to give him credit for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was trolling there. Someone said, no, he's 26. I know he's 26 in it, but I just add on the 2 years tax. Do you know what I'm saying? But listen, do you know what it is? Like you mentioned, his ball retention, he can give it away a lot. Make the simple passes sometimes look difficult in the final third. And that's what bugs me when you're looking at the overall game of the player. And sometimes stats are misleading, which a lot of people will say, if you take the penalties, cool. But if you take the penalties away from you, what do you do then? Do you know what I mean? But when you have someone that has that type of shithousery, which is what I would call it, the never say die attitude, and you every team wants someone like that.
It's a nasty player. He doesn't mind kicking. Like I've seen it. It's a very nasty.
He doesn't mind it, and every team needs that. Because then, when the thing is with Bruno is, as much as he might give it away and he's frustrating at times and whatnot, when he's on the pitch, you can get a goal. You know that he can turn up at any moment, and that's the thing with him, and that's why he's in these conversations, because he delivers. He is the man who, maybe the factory will do loads of work behind him, but he will be the person to deliver the letter. Do you know what I mean? He'll be the person.
The postman. He's the postman.
He's the postman. He's the postman. He is the delivery man. Do you know what I'm saying? From ASOS, the person comes to the door. There you go. Do you know what I mean? Forget all the guys that knitted the clothes together in the factories and whatnot. Nah, come. This is your letter. Here you go. Do you know what I'm saying? And he's always there. Grealish. We haven't spoken about him yet on the show. I think that he's been unbelievable since he got back to the Premier League. Literally, he was obviously last season up there with chances created behind just De Bruyne as well. He's been sensational. Obviously, England are very lucky to have him. He's not in this current squad, I think, down to injury, but I'm very excited to see him hopefully in the Euros. Bro, when someone's got their socks that low, they got to do something special. and he delivers.
Yeah, he, for me, is one of the best players in the Premier League. I love him. Probably the most enjoyable player for me in the Premier League. I mean, just the way he drifts with the ball, the way he glides on the floor, the way he beats, players for fun. And I think the biggest compliment that I can pay him is his final ball. I think he's worked on that a lot this season. I think last season he got into opportunities in the final third and he wouldn't find that killer pass. But now he's threading it through an eye of a needle. And I think Aston Villa without him are low-end Premier League.
Yeah.
I would say. Even probably relegation contenders, maybe. Probably. But when you put Jack Grealish into that team, he takes them into top 8 candidates. And I think he's England's best player, in my opinion.
Do you think so? That good?
He's a throwback. Like nowadays, we see football pattern of play, side to side, robotic, stationary. He breaks that mold. You know, sometimes he goes on a one-man crusade. I'm going to dribble from the outside of my box to the opposition, and I'm going to play a penetrative pass. You know, he takes on all comers, defenders, go inside, outside. He can do everything. He's literally a jack of all trades, literally. So I think, like, he's ceiling. He needs to go to that next level. And I remember we spoke to Joleon Lescott on our podcast, and he was saying that this boy, he needs to be going to a Manchester City, a Man United, playing in the Champions League week in, week out, because his ability, like, he's my favorite player to watch in the Premier League. The Salahs, the Manes, the Sterlings, but there's something else to this guy. Like,
and the thing
he's got that X factor.
He gets kicked all game and he just gets up, deals with it. And that's the biggest compliment I can give him. I see so many players nowadays, they get fouled and they're rolling on the floor. They're saying, what's going on, ref? Like, he's took me out. Where's the yellow card? But Grealish just gets up and does his job.
Yeah, he is a throwback. I love watching him play. It's, for me, the fact that he plays the game at his tempo as well. Like, you can tell he's in control of what's going on. He's not going to be dictated and told what to do or controlled by anyone on that pitch. He's playing at his tempo. And if he wants to go on a sprint, you keep up. If not, then we'll slow it down and I'll nutmeg you and cut inside. And again, it's the fact that, like you said, there's top players, and if they're surrounded by top players, that's always cool. But I love to see someone carry a team. And when they walk out onto that pitch, that's a different mentality. When you're walking out onto the pitch and you know you're the best player on your team, and if you don't deliver, your team likely won't get the 3 points. That is a different situation for everybody. That is when that is when, for me, you have to be on another gear mentally. You've got to be consistent. You've got to be very confident in yourself and your ability, and you're carrying your team, and that's what Grealish does. So, I mean, for player of the year, who would you guys give it to? I mean, we went through the list before. It was kind of Diaz.
I think there's a unanimous deciation, and I think just to stop you there, you mentioned the man.
Is that what we're doing?
Wait. Just to clarify before we go to Diaz, we've removed Mendy from the list, because I don't like the way that one was clipped in. That was pathetic.
But go on, bro. I'm joking.
So Diaz is in there, and to be fair, Man City have got the best defense in the league. You know, he's almost, I think, got stones to raise his game as well to the level as well. I would give him a lot of credit for that. I think Pep has changed and tinkered a few things as well, the way that he plays. But I think Diaz has been an incredible signing, first season in the Premier League as well. So potentially maybe it goes to him. People will say Harry Kane. He's turned into a playmaker this year, drop deep, been very influential on the ball. We know he's set up loads of chances for Son as well, loads of assists, still getting the goals in a Mourinho team as well that, for me, doesn't actually cater to attacking players. Very stifled, very negative, very defensive, and he still turns up and gets the goals. So I think those three are probably your shouts.
I'll go against the grain.
Okay.
Harry Kane, I understand he's had a fantastic season, one of his best seasons of his career. But for me, the big question mark is, where's Harry Kane been in the big games? And I haven't seen him this season, unfortunately. So, as for Diaz,
I think that's due to the system that the manager deploys. Like 9 at the back, 10 at the back. I remember watching
I don't think so.
At Anfield, and the team very negative, camped in their half. So what do you expect him to produce? He's not the most explosive. He relies on service to be able to get his goals.
I disagree with you there. I think that Mourinho team is perfectly set out for Harry Kane and his son to just wreak, destruction on teams, because it's literally everyone apart from you two up front are served to get the ball to those two for them to destroy a team. So I think holistically, yes, you can say that Mourinho's team is set up defensively, but from a front two perspective, I think they've got a lot of freedom to go out and play and connect with each other and score goals. And I think that's why we're seeing the best version of Harry Kane. But going back to your point in terms of who should win the Player of the Year, I think it's easy to say Diaz, so I'm not going to say Diaz. I'm actually going to go with Gundogan.
Yeah, there we
and
go.
The reason, there you go. And the reason why I'm going to go with Gundogan was when the title race was tight. Manchester City weren't winning 4-0, 5-0. It was more 1-0, 2-1. Gundogan scoring a brace. Gabriel Jesus injured, Aguero injured. Gundogan stepped up and showed form that we've never seen from him before. And I think Pep Guardiola has been a manager to always use Gundogan in that role to break into the box and potentially score goals. And over the past few years, we've seen Gundogan do it, but maybe score 4, 5, 6 goals in a season. But this season, he's had the season of his career from a goal scoring point of view. And I think when the title race was tight, he's the one that decided the title, stepping up for Manchester City week in, week out. And I think he scored 10 goals in 10 games to win them the title. So for me, it's Gundogan.
That's a solid shout.
Yeah, just to buttress that, I think it has to be Ruben Diaz. I remember end of last season, I was one of those people that said, Manchester City domestically are full up. And what he's done, he's a rival into that defence. Notoriously, Pep has had a bad record for signing centre-backs. We've all seen Nicholas Otamendi. There's been other cases, even dating back to his time at Barcelona. Chekinski, that's the one I was going to mention. And people were mentioning, is this guy another one of those? Well, he's ripped up the copybook. He is a type A defender. I normally talk about type A's and type B's. The reason why John Stones is able to succeed, he's a type B. He needs to be led. And Ruben Diaz, you see him on the pitch pointing, barking out instructions. And he's the only reason for me that Manchester City have a shot of winning the Champions League. Without a Diaz in that defence, I don't think they've got a viable chance. And as you mentioned, best defence in the Premier League.
Yeah.
They haven't conceded a goal in the Champions League in donkeys long. And that's a large portion of that is to Ruben Diaz. So I think definitely he's the player of the season, because what's changed between Manchester City last season and this season is his presence. And he's
I think it's easy to say that Diaz has changed everything, but I think it's more down to Pep's tinkering, the tactical awareness of how to control space, how to press the game, how to suffocate oppositions.
Okay, could they do that? Could they do that without a Ruben Diaz? Could they do that with the defenders, with a Nathan Ake, for instance? Would they be able to produce the level of performance that they're doing?
I wouldn't say, maybe not consistently, but I think it would have been good enough for them to win the league, because when you hark back to Pep's first title winning team, it was Otamendi and John Stones at the back, and we will both say that neither of those defenders are type A. Neither of those defenders are leaders at the back, and they had the best defensive record that season. And I think it's more from a structural point of view. But going back to Diaz, he's a monster. He's an unreal defender. But I think he's been brilliant, and he's taken this Manchester City team to a next level in terms of defensive output. But I think the way Gundogan reinvented himself as this sort of false nine attacking midfielder that scores 10 Premier League goals in a season, and crucial goals, key goals. I remember him scoring a brace against Tottenham, if I'm not mistaken. I think he scored against Chelsea, if I'm not mistaken. In the big games, Gundogan came clutch this season. He scored against Liverpool. I just think he was the man that carried them over the line.
Do you think he's been consistent for long enough over the whole season to win Player of the Year?
Maybe not, but sometimes all it takes is a spell. He's the player that shut down the title race. He said, listen, there's no inconsistency from us this season. I'm going to win Manchester City and help them go on a 19-game winning run that they went on. And he was the main man in that run, because Gabriel Jesus was out of sorts. Sergio Aguero has been crippled by injuries this season. So I think Gundogan is the man that carried them over the line.
I have to give him immense credit for that, because I didn't expect it from him as well. I really didn't. I'll just be the person that stands out and goes with something completely different, and I'll give it to... It's very hard for me not to give it to a Man City player. That's the problem, because they have stormed the league. Part of me does want to just give it to Grealish, because I do love the way that he's been playing football this year. He's just been incredible again, back-to-back seasons. I love the consistency from him. He does need to make that move now, 100%. Whether it's to... I don't know who it will be to, because Man United, they're not really showing like they're going to cough up the cash. I don't know where he'll go, but maybe he won't even be so fast to move. I don't know. It will be an interesting one. He does need to play Champions League football, and he's in his prime now, so you'd expect him to make that move. And then the outsiders I had obviously was Ward-Prowse, who I think has been really good this season at Southampton. I think he's just been sometimes we undervalue set pieces, and I feel like in this day and age as well, I don't see so many long shots and set piece goals and like there was back in the day of like Scholes and Lampard and Gerrard and even two guy at Blackburn used to whack them in from the volleys from the corners. Do you know what I mean? We don't really get that these days, and I think Ward-Prowse is a little bit of a throwback there, where he from set pieces he is very deadly, and I think the England team need that as well. So I'm happy to have him as an outsider. I mean, guys, that kind of rounds up the show. I mean, we've definitely debated strong on Mendy there at the beginning. Do you know what I mean? I had to throw him into the Chelsea fans, but Mendy got bodied, as they would say. Do you know what I'm saying? He got bodied off the panel. He got bodied off the list. But maybe at the end of the season, hopefully, we might get him back onto the shortlist minimum. If Chelsea end the season with top clean sheets, Thomas Tuchel's not really been conceding too much.
I don't think that's enough. I don't think we can just, as Des said earlier, I don't think we can just look at clean sheets and say, okay, who was the goalkeeper with the most clean sheets? Okay, Mendy, summer signing, let's put him in the team of the year, or let's put him as one of the. I think that's no, I'm not having that. I'm not having it. I'm not.
Man, I tried to bring some bias, but these men are on objective. Do you know what I'm saying? They're on it. I mean, boys, let them know where you can find you. We're not going to talk about Liverpool because it's been a rough one. Yeah. I'm not going to do that to you. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to do that. I'm keeping it calm. We're in the international break. We didn't come for the madness. You know what I'm saying? Let them.
Love, bro. Love. Man.
The link is in the description, people. The Beautiful Game podcast. Make sure you guys go check it out. They're interviewing, players across the board, from your Daniel Sturridges to your Michael Richards, all the way to your Punchin. Jason Punchin was doing bits in the Premier League. He was always that guy with the left foot one who could whip it into the corner, whether it be at Southampton, whether it be at Palace, and he's gone off the grid now. So make sure you go and check that out. I just come from that episode there. So, boys, any final words, anything final to say? It's been a pleasure to have you on.
No, just love for having us on, man. We really appreciate it. We see you doing big things with your interviews, your match analysis. Like, just thank you for inviting us on. It's been a pleasure, man, to chop it up. Like, your stuff, your ball, man. So it's been quality.
Appreciate it. Man, it's been a pleasure. It's been a long time coming. Obviously, we appreciate the opportunity to feature on your channel. And much love, man. Keep up the great content. Lastly, I must plug, go over to our YouTube channel and follow the Beautiful Game podcast. We've got some, fantastic stuff coming up soon. So keep your ears and eyes peeled.
Love that. Like I said, boys, link is in the description for everyone in the live chat. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm going to be dashing over to the other side of the coin right now. That show's kicking off with me, Alex Goldberg, and obviously the host, Miz. And people, big up yourselves, and I'll see you in a bit.
Love.
In a bit.
Love.
Love.
Perfect.